Global Greenwashing Festival. Now, staying with climate, and conferences like COP26 don't talk enough about threats to the species that make up the natural world. That's according to the Director General of WWF International. Marco Lambertini has been speaking to our environment reporter, Navin Khadka, and says that because of climate change and how economies have been evolving, the suffering of animal species in all ecosystems is a grave concern, and more attention should be paid to the intrinsic value of all animals.
It is true that when we talk about nature, we seldom go down to the level of species and individuals that actually are making up the natural world of today. And by the way, species and individuals which are declining sharply. In the last, less than last 50 years, we have seen two-thirds decline of wildlife population globally. Less than 50 years. This is a blink of an eye compared to species that's been around on the planet for millions of species. And suddenly, because of our intervention, their populations has plummeted. 1 million species are on the brink of extinction. I mean, all these are tragic figures that, on one hand, affect the productivity, the functionality, the resilience of the natural world that provides so many services to us. So that's a utilitarian perspective. But also, on the other hand, these creatures have the right to exist, and we have the duty to coexist with life on Earth, because this is not our planet. This is a planet that we are passengers on. We are not the captains.
So you agree that wildlife, flora and fauna, animals and plants are by and large ignored in these meetings? Until
recently, nature conservation, wildlife conservation was exactly based on a moral duty to coexist. But the new narrative that is emerging, which is actually equally powerful, it's not just a moral duty, but actually it is a fundamental necessity, because our economy, our society, our health, our well-being depends on nature. But it doesn't mean that looking at nature as a service and all the goods and services it provides to us should alienate and make us ignore the rights of nature, the intrinsic value of nature, and the right of all these creatures to exist and to share the planet with us.
How badly have our wildlife impacted because of climate change, and how has that increased the challenges for you for nature conservation, to protect them?
Yeah, so climate change has been kind of rising in the ladder of threats to wildlife steadily over the last few decades. Right now, it's considered to be the third biggest threat. The first threat is habitat conversion, and so particularly for food production and for feed for farmed animals around the world. That's the number one threat. But climate change is already the third, and is affecting species in mountain level because they're changing the climate, that they can't move up anymore. It is affecting through droughts wildlife everywhere in the world. It is affecting wildlife through wildfires, forest fires around the world as well. Temperature heat waves are beginning to be an issue too, particularly in the ocean. Half of the Great Barrier Reef has been killed by underwater heat waves, and the same for wildlife on land. I mean, we have a situation of fruit bats in Australia that died of heat strokes. Things never happened before, and unfortunately now are beginning to happen.